Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our of the day here on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. And to round it off, we are switching gears to the world of college football for a little bit. We did Super Bowl odds for the halfway, kind of quarter-way point of the NFL season, and now we're kind of beyond the halfway point of the college football season. So I might be a little bit late in doing these odds updates for you, but these top 5 teams that I found on Monday morning, remember, this was all written down at the start of the week, so if anything did change, please let me know, but I do feel like these top 5 teams are a deserving top 5. Maybe a little bit of skepticism throughout the list, but without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Starting off at number 5, a team that, hasn't looked pretty, but still are in the conversation. They can still make the SEC championship game, they could still win, and they could still make a deep CFP run, and that is the Alabama Crimson Tide at plus 850. Now, the reason why I feel like Vegas is respecting them more than, pundits around college football circles is because of the fact that they still believe that there's room to grow here. And not for nothing, I believe in that sentiment as well. There will be situations where, under a new head coach in their first season, there will be games where you look a little shaky. But they still have one of the most impressive wins in the country against Georgia, albeit at home, but I don't think that necessarily matters. And all you got to do is keep winning to have a chance. And even if you're a 2-loss team, by virtue of that win, I still feel you're someone who I should warn. As Babster Loafman also asked me, you are a superstar today, my man. Thank you for being so interactive for today's show. Sutton or Jacoby Myers this week, if Jacoby is healthy, or Jerry Jeudy. I think out of all these receivers, Sutton might be the guy. I feel like, Jacoby Myers, yes, might get more opportunities now than Devontae Adams, but really, and he also asked, would you put any of them over Kirk? I would put Sutton over Kirk, actually, if you want my honest opinion. But really, Jacoby and Jeudy, yes, they're in situations where the top receivers are gone. But let's be honest with you. If Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, or Deshaun Watson is your quarterback, are you really expecting to get as many targets as you believe? I like that a lot of you or a lot of commenters here have been proactive in terms of asking me about guys like Jerry Jeudy and Jacoby Myers, but right now it's just the fact of the matter being their offenses suck. And I don't know if there's any room to get better for them. And I feel like both the Raiders and the Browns are in situations where they're packing it in already. And not for nothing, they do feel like more run-oriented teams as well. So, I don't know, as Pastor Lumen says, love the input, thanks, man. So, thank you to you as well, as he also subscribed as well. I appreciate it, my man, thank you. Keep on commenting if you so choose throughout the week. And I hope to see you on more shows as well. But going back into my college football player rankings, the Alabama Crimson Tide, just win out. That's the mantra if you're Alabama right now. Even as a 2-loss team, even if you lose along the way, say to Tennessee this weekend, you have a chance. You're not necessarily eliminated with another loss. But if you win, and win convincingly, then chances are you're a team that's going to be a force in the college football playoff and might potentially make a deep run. But at the number 4 position are the Oregon Ducks. And a lot of people might say they deserve to move up at plus 550 to say at least second in terms of odds. But I feel like Oregon winning changed the narrative of the Big Ten to where chances are more likely for that loss to be avenged or for we're going to trip up along the way and fall. Now, that's why I think that they are where they are at right now. And they haven't been that convincing. In fact, out of all the top 5 teams here on my list, they've been the least convincing, in my opinion, at least to start the season. They still have that impressive win. And by virtue of that win, if they win out, or if they even have one loss, they still are a huge competitor and huge contender in the CFP race. At the end of the day, they still have a lot of questions about their realness in the Big Ten race because a lot of up-and-coming teams could knock them off their perch. You miss a lot of those teams, but say you're facing a very hot Indiana team potentially in the Big Ten championship, and you're not facing Ohio State again, which if you win twice against Ohio State makes you look much better. Let's say you lose one game in the regular season. You're in the conference championship, and you're not facing Ohio State, and you lose that one too. Your margin for error is much slimmer than teams ahead of you. So if you're Oregon, you have a good win, but you're walking a thin line, I feel like. And your margin for error is much slimmer than it feels for other teams above you, especially the top three here. And going to number 3, their margin for error is also very slim, but they are who they are, and that is the Georgia Bulldogs at plus 450. We talk about this a lot in the circles of GSMC about Georgia and how they could be, if they lose 3 games, the only 3-loss team even being considered for the CFP. I won't necessarily go that far because this game against Texas is one they really do have to win. But out of all these teams, Georgia should be the least worried about their standing. As Baptist Loafman says, do I think Shedeur Sanders is a pro-tier quarterback? Now, the thing about Shedeur Sanders is a very specific kind of quarterback, right? Because he's someone who can operate in certain offenses, but he also brings with him a certain personality that you're going to have to live with. And a lot of teams in need of quarterback help, say Tennessee, potentially New York, feel like teams where you're either not going to have that much attention on you or you're going to be in a big media market right away and all the attention is going to be on you. But I think the one thing that sets Shedeur apart from other kind of quarterbacks in this class is the fact he hasn't necessarily been at a high-profile school throughout his career. He hasn't necessarily had the talent around him to succeed. Yes, he has a good receiving core, but his offensive line has been less than the sum of its parts. So I do think that he has potential traits that would really appeal to a team. It's just a matter of which team he goes to and how they handle him early on in his career. But that being said, I do think highly of him as a prospect. And we're going to have to see which team selects him. And not for nothing, speaking of quarterbacks, Carson Beck is going to be the X factor for the Georgia Bulldogs going forward here. And in this game against Texas, if he doesn't look like himself, he's not comfortable in the pocket, I feel like it will spell danger for Georgia, not just in this game, but in games going forward. They still have to play Tennessee. I think they still have to play Ole Miss as well. So their margin for error is getting slimmer, but that being said, they are who they are. And they deserve to at least be, if they do end up losing all 3 of those games, a team that you still have to consider for the prestige alone. And that just says something about the character of this football team. That, as Baptist Loman also says, tough schedule, I agree. But you still have to consider them just for what they bring to the table in terms of what having them in the CFP means, especially in a 12-team format like this one. But number 2 here is a team that actually did lose this week, only a team that lost this past week in Ohio State, and plus 450. And a lot of people are skeptical, or might be skeptical about this ranking here. But the reason why I think Ohio State is ranked higher than Oregon after that game is because they have a chance to avenge it. And they are the more complete team. I just feel like that game, the last couple of minutes of it were just so weird and so kind of rushed that it didn't represent what Ohio State football is. It didn't represent the whole team identity because they were in this game, they played a good football game, but it was largely defined by the last 2 minutes is why a lot of people are a little bit skeptical about them. I still think that this is a team that can run the table, get back to the Big Ten championship game, and if they face Oregon, avenge that loss, and be a high seed in the CFP. And so that's why I feel Vegas is looking at this loss like a win almost for Ohio State because it gets them back on track. They now know there's a little margin for error, but they know that if they win out, they could potentially meet Oregon again in a game with higher stakes. So look for Ohio State and number 2 to be the value. But the number 1 team definitely deserves it, at least through the first couple of weeks of the season. And that is the Texas Longhorns. A lot was going to be called into question, but at plus 375, you're definitely looking at perhaps the most complete team portfolio so far. Not for nothing, a lot of people are kind of questioning their schedule. I believe it is the 8th hardest schedule up to this point in the season for the Texas Longhorns. This game, Saturday, isn't necessarily a must-win for them, but I feel like a lot of people want proof that Texas is the cream of the crop in the SEC. And not for nothing, they can win every other game this season. But a lot of people want Texas to win this game to really prove their might and their power in the SEC as a new member of this conference. As Baptist says, as painful as it is, I'm a Cal Bears fan. Do you ever watch the team? I actually am not that familiar with the Cal Bears, except for the fact that they nearly beat Miami. But I do think that they are a surprise team, and I like them a lot. They could be a fun team in a couple years down the road in the ACC. But the fact of the matter is, I don't necessarily know that the team has much to really talk about them to some extent. But it's nice that I have a fellow college football fan in my comment section, someone that appreciates these segments like this. So hopefully we can talk a little bit more about college football together, my man. I really enjoy your comments today. But to close out today's show, I feel like if Texas just handles its business, they are going to go into the CFP with house money here. And not for nothing, they do have coming up a couple tough games. They play Vandy, they play Arkansas, and their last game of the season is against Texas A&M. So those are 3 tough games against 3 very tough opponents in the SEC. But if Texas has proven anything, it's proven that their profile alone coming into the SEC makes them a very powerful team that you can't ignore if they have, say, 1 or 2 losses. They're not the 3-loss Georgia kind of team just yet because they haven't necessarily earned that much clout. But they are a scary team because of what they bring to the SEC. And that might be enough if, say, they falter down the road or this weekend to mean more to the committee than any other team. But we know what you think in the comments because that will just about do it for today's show. This has been the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you all for commenting. If you want to continue contributing to the show directly during my live streams, want your comments and opinions read out loud, continue making yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features on the show as Baptist Loafman thanks me as well. Thank you, my man. Hope to see you in future shows. Like, follow, and subscribe like Baptist did today if you like this kind of content and want to see more of it. But other than that, we will see you tomorrow to close out the week here on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. Same time as always, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But other than that, I've been Christopher Shepard. Thank you all for watching. I'm out.